Coming live from the Tivoli Met Radio studio here on Auraria campus, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for listening to All Sports through Met Radio on mymetmedia.com, live every Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On this show today, I am going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, NHL hockey, college football, and soccer. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great weekend. To start off with Major League Baseball, the Yankees announced Luis Severino will need Tommy John surgery and he will miss the entire season. The Yankees announced Giancarlo Stanton will miss the start of the regular season due to a strained right calf he suffered during spring training. Last season, Giancarlo Stanton played in only 18 games due to a number of injuries, and he batted a .288 with 3 home runs in 59 at-bats. In 2018, Giancarlo Stanton hit 38 home runs in his first year with the Yankees, after he had a career high 59 home runs in 2017 with the Marlins. Since Giancarlo Stanton has gotten this new contract when he was on the Marlins roster, he didn't play that long with the Marlins down in Miami before the Marlins traded him to the Yankees. Giancarlo Stanton had a great career, and he was one of the best players in Major League Baseball, especially at the plate. With what he was batting, the amount of home runs he would hit, he was such a great player when he was on the Marlins. And he's still a great player, even now that he plays for the Yankees. But since Giancarlo Stanton has been playing for the Yankees, he hasn't been the same player like he was with the Marlins. And this is due to the amount of injuries Giancarlo Stanton has suffered. With the amount of injuries that he has suffered since being a member of the Yankees, especially last season, Giancarlo Stanton has missed many games, and he has missed most of the season. Since the time he has been a member of the Yankees, he has missed many games, and he has also missed the majority of the season. Between all the seasons he's been with the Yankees, Giancarlo Stanton is still a great player, even though he has missed significant time since being a member of the Yankees due to the amount of injuries he has suffered. Now we're going to have to wait and see when Giancarlo Stanton returns back for the Yankees and when he makes his regular season debut. But hopefully in 2020, Giancarlo Stanton plays most of the season and he's not out most of the season. We're just going to have to wait and see at what point does Giancarlo Stanton return back to the Yankees lineup once the regular season begins. But since he suffered this injury in spring training, hopefully it's not another down year for Giancarlo Stanton, since it's not off to a good start. But because he suffered this injury during spring training, he shouldn't miss that much of the beginning of the regular season. And since the regular season starts at the end of March, Giancarlo Stanton should be ready to return sometime in the beginning of the regular season, which would likely be sometime in April. So we're going to have to wait and see when Giancarlo Stanton returns back for the Yankees. This is definitely a huge loss for the Yankees, since Giancarlo Stanton was definitely one of the best players in Major League Baseball, especially when he was a member of the Marlins. And now he needs to prove that he's still one of the best players in Major League Baseball now that he plays for the Yankees. But injuries has been a major problem for Giancarlo Stanton, especially since he's been a member of the Yankees. And for Giancarlo Stanton to show his potential and what he's worth, he's going to have to be on the field, at the plate batting, especially having a high batting average, hit a lot of home runs. So hopefully we get to see that in 2020, because there's no doubt that Giancarlo Stanton, when he's healthy and when he's playing on the field, that he's one of the best players in Major League Baseball. But if you have to sit on the bench due to injuries, you don't get to show your potential. And hopefully Giancarlo Stanton can show his potential for the Yankees. Because there's no doubt if Giancarlo Stanton is playing for the Yankees, he will be one of the best players on the Yankees roster. And you add Giancarlo Stanton to the mix with Aaron Judge in that Yankees lineup, the Yankees can be one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, since they could have one of the best lineups in Major League Baseball, because you got Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge in the same lineup. But no matter what player it is, especially if it's one of the best players in Major League Baseball, and whatever team they play for, it could be the Yankees or the other Major League Baseball teams. When you have a particular player out due to injury and they miss a significant time due to the injury that they have or due to the amount of injuries that they suffer throughout the season, this could definitely impact a Major League Baseball team, especially if one of their best players or their franchise player is out and missing significant time due to injuries. And if you have certain individual players on a certain team that is out for a significant amount of time, this can impact that team, especially if it's a team that is playoff bound or a team that could possibly be a World Series contender. And just by having a particular player out or not in the lineup, that can impact your team on being a playoff team, but especially a World Series contender. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NFL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NFL football. According to multiple reports, the Broncos are expected to franchise tag Justin Simmons if the two sides can't agree to a new contract extension. So we're going to have to wait and see if the Broncos do franchise tag Justin Simmons. So far they haven't, but if they do use their franchise tag, it will be on Justin Simmons if the two sides can't agree to a new contract in the next few weeks. The Broncos are picking up linebacker Todd Davis's and kicker Brandon McManus's contract option. The Broncos are not picking up offensive lineman Ronald Leary's, defensive lineman Adam Gottis, and linebacker Corey Nelson's contract option, and they will become free agents. We're also going to have to wait and see if the Broncos do pick up Joe Flacco's contract option. That's going to be interesting to see if they do pick up Joe Flacco's contract, or are they going to try to trade him or release him. But depending on what the Broncos do, if they do release Joe Flacco, they would have more money added to their cap salary. So we're going to have to wait and see what the Broncos do with Joe Flacco. But there is a possibility that Joe Flacco stays with the Broncos as the backup quarterback. Joe Flacco has said he wants to stay with the Broncos, but the only way that's going to happen is if Joe Flacco is willing to accept a pay cut. And if Joe Flacco is willing to do that, the Broncos will keep Joe Flacco as their backup quarterback. But if not, and the Broncos do decide to move on from Joe Flacco, they will be looking for a backup quarterback to back up Drew Lock if it's not Joe Flacco during free agency. So we're going to have to wait and see who the backup quarterback will be for the Broncos. Also, we're going to have to wait and see if the Broncos pick up any other contracts or if they do not pick up any more contracts. But depending on what the Broncos do for the next few weeks, with picking up or not picking up contract options, with signing current or new players to new contracts, it's all going to come down to how the Broncos spend the cap money they're going to have through free agency. And it's going to depend on what the Broncos do in the NFL draft with the amount of draft picks they have. But with the amount of money that the Broncos have to spend on free agents, and with the amount of draft picks that the Broncos have in the upcoming NFL draft, the Broncos can really improve the team for 2020. It's all going to come down to what they do, what moves they make, and how they spend the money, and who they draft with the draft picks. And depending on what they do, especially in free agency and in the draft, after the draft passes, in these next few weeks pass, we're going to have a better idea if the Broncos are capable of having a winning season in 2020 and having the possibility of getting back into the playoffs in 2020. But it's all going to start with what the Broncos do this offseason through free agency and through the draft. But the Broncos, what they have available in free agency and in the upcoming draft, they have the potential of turning this team around in 2020 into a winning football team. And the Broncos definitely want to have a winning team in 2020, and they want to get back into the playoffs in 2020. But the Broncos also want to compete with the Chiefs, especially with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, just after the Chiefs won Super Bowl 54. And the Broncos want to compete with the Chargers and the Raiders for the AFC West. But in 2020, the Broncos roster can definitely look a lot different, especially on offense and defense. It's looking like the Broncos are going to improve their defense through free agency, and they're going to improve their offense through the draft. So we're going to have to wait and see what new players the Broncos bring in during free agency and through the draft. But the Broncos definitely want to improve their team for 2020 so they have a winning season, but they also want to compete with their divisional rivals, especially the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Raiders, so the Broncos can have the possibility of trying to win the AFC West and getting back into the playoffs in 2020. But in 2020, the Broncos roster should definitely look a lot different on offense and defense, and it should definitely be a team that's capable of having a winning season and getting back into the playoffs in 2020. But the AFC West is definitely going to look different, especially with the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders. We already know what the Chiefs are capable of with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs just after they won Super Bowl 54. But the Broncos, Chargers, and the Raiders can have different rosters in 2020. So the teams in the AFC West are the teams to keep an eye on this offseason and going into the 2020 season. The Panthers announced they are moving forward with Cam Newton being their quarterback for the 2020 season. There's no doubt that Cam Newton is a great quarterback, especially when he was in college and even in his first few years in the NFL with the Panthers. But what has stopped Cam Newton from being an elite quarterback and being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL is with the amount of injuries he has suffered in the last few seasons, which has sidelined Cam Newton for the majority of the season, or even the entire season, due to the type of injuries he has and due to the amount of injuries he has suffered. But because of what Cam Newton is capable of and what he had shown in his college career and in the beginning of his NFL career, the Panthers still believe that Cam Newton is their quarterback, even though he has suffered many injuries and he has been sidelined due to the amount of injuries he has suffered, which has sidelined him for the majority of these past few seasons. But the Panthers believe that Cam Newton is still their quarterback, and they're going to give him another chance in 2020. And we're going to have to wait and see how Cam Newton plays in the 2020 season, and if he plays the majority of the season or the entire season, after Cam Newton has not played the majority of the last few seasons. The Chiefs placed their franchise tag on Chris Jones. The Jaguars placed their franchise tag on Joakim Nokedi. We're going to have to wait and see. But all 32 NFL teams have a franchise tag that they can use on one particular player. And we're going to have to wait and see if any more NFL teams will use their franchise tag on a certain player on their roster. But usually, when a team uses their franchise tag, is because they cannot negotiate a new contract with that individual player, and the two sides can't agree to the new type of contract that they want for this individual player. The majority of the time, after a franchise tag is placed on an individual player, just before training camp begins, the two sides agree to a new contract with this individual player. But sometimes there is the possibility that this individual player will play on the franchise tag for the upcoming season, which is a one-year contract. And when an individual player plays on a franchise tag, is likely because the team wants to see how this individual player performs in the upcoming season, to see what type of contract this individual player will get the following season, and if the team is willing to give this individual player a new long-term contract. By the way, they played during the past season when they were playing on the franchise tag. So that's mainly how the franchise tag is used on individual players throughout the NFL, and every NFL team has the option to use their franchise tag on one individual player due to many different reasons, but the main reason is because the two sides cannot agree to a new contract, or the team wants to see how this player plays in the upcoming season after the type of performance they had the previous season, and that team wants to see if this individual player is capable of getting a new contract from this team. And if that individual player is not getting a new contract from this team after being placed on the franchise tag, then this particular team will move on from this individual player due to the type of performance that they shown on the field during that past season after that player played on the franchise tag. Deion Sanders is the only athlete to play in both a Super Bowl and in a World Series. Bob Hayes is the only athlete to win a Super Bowl and an Olympic gold medal. Jennifer King is the first African American woman to coach full-time in the NFL. Back in 1988, Johnny Greer was the first African American referee in the NFL. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NBA and NHL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NBA basketball. The Warriors announced Steph Curry didn't return back to the Warriors lineup on Sunday, March 1st against the Wizards. The Warriors stated that they want Steph Curry to have more practice time before he returns back to the Warriors lineup sometime in March. This season, Steph Curry has only played in 4 games after breaking his left hand on October 30th in the beginning of the season, and he needed surgery to repair his hand, which was a 4-month recovery. This season, the Warriors haven't been the same team since they have been the worst team in the NBA, with Steph Curry sitting out most of the season due to his broken left hand he suffered on October 30th, Klay Thompson sitting out the entire season since he is recovering from a torn ACL he suffered last season, and Kevin Durant left the Warriors for the Nets. So if we take a look at the Warriors have not been the same team they have been the last few seasons, especially with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on the court. This season, the Warriors are the worst team in the NBA, and they also have the worst record in the NBA, which is likely caused by Steph Curry missing most of the season. Klay Thompson has missed the entire season so far, and he's likely going to sit out this entire season as he is recovering from a torn ACL that he suffered last season in the NBA Finals against the Raptors. But this year's Warriors team has not been the same, especially with Klay Thompson sitting out, but especially Steph Curry, after he has missed the majority of this season after breaking his left hand towards the beginning of the regular season. Now we're going to have to wait and see when Steph Curry returns back to the Warriors lineup. It's definitely going to be sometime in March, and it's very likely that it's going to be in the next few weeks, towards the beginning of March. We're just going to have to wait and see when the Warriors announce that Steph Curry is returning back to the lineup. But even when Steph Curry returns back to the lineup for the Warriors, with the Warriors having the worst record in the NBA and being the worst team in the NBA this season, it's not like the Warriors are just going to turn around and win every game because Steph Curry has returned. And even with Steph Curry returning back to the lineup, the Warriors are not going to be making it into the playoffs. And with just about a month left of regular season basketball, there's no way the Warriors are going to win the amount of games they would need to win to make it into the playoffs. So this season has been a down season for the Warriors, especially because the Warriors were expecting Klay Thompson to sit out most of the season or the entire season as he is recovering from his torn ACL. The Warriors were not expecting Steph Curry to miss the majority of the season since he broke his left hand. And Kevin Durant left the Warriors for the Nets this past offseason. So the Warriors this season have not been the same, especially since Steph Curry has missed most of the season. Klay Thompson has missed the entire season. He's likely going to miss the entire season. Kevin Durant left the Warriors for the Nets, even though Kevin Durant's in the same situation as Klay Thompson. They're likely going to miss the entire season as they're recovering from the injury that they suffered last season during the NBA Finals against the Raptors. Last season in the NBA Finals, when the Warriors were going against the Raptors, Klay Thompson tore his ACL and Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. Since Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant suffered those type of injuries, everyone already knew that they were going to miss most of this upcoming season or the entire season as they're recovering from their leg injury. Even though this season has been a down season for the Warriors, with Steph Curry missing most of the season and Klay Thompson missing most of the season and likely the entire season, and Kevin Durant leaving the Warriors for the Nets, the Warriors have been able to see other players step up and see if their bench players are capable of playing in the NBA and for the Warriors going into the future. And even though the Warriors have the worst record in the NBA, this offseason, the Warriors will be able to rebuild their roster through free agency or through the NBA draft with the high draft pick they're going to get because of the type of season that they had. Even though this has been a down season for the Warriors do want to move on from this season after this season ends, and they want to rebuild their team and look forward to the following season. Since Steph Curry and Klay Thompson will be back for the Warriors next season, and the Warriors want to build a team around Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and have a winning team and a winning season next season and going into the future, so the Warriors can get back to the playoffs, have winning seasons. But the Warriors want to get back to the NBA Finals and continuing to win NBA Finals going into the future. After the Warriors made it to the NBA Finals the last 5 seasons, and they won 3 out of the last 5 NBA Finals. So the Warriors want to continue having winning seasons, getting into the playoffs, being one of the best teams in the Western Conference and in the NBA, but especially the Warriors want to get back to the NBA Finals and win more NBA Finals with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on the Warriors roster. James Harden moved into 5th in all-time three-pointers made. Vince Carter moved into 6th in all-time three-pointers made. LeBron James recorded his 21st triple-double, and it tied Kobe Bryant for the 3rd most in Lakers franchise history. LeBron James became the first player in his 17th season to have a 40-point game since Kobe Bryant back in 2013. Bradley Beal scored 50-plus points in back-to-back games the Wizards lost. Kobe Bryant was the last player back in March of 2017 to score 50-plus points in back-to-back games. Luka Doncic, Magic Johnson, and LeBron James had the most career triple-doubles before turning 21 years old. Luka Doncic tied Jason Kidd for the most triple-doubles in Mavericks franchise history. Zion Williamson became the first teenager in NBA history to score 20-plus points in 10 straight games. Zion Williamson tied Carmelo Anthony for the most points in a game versus the Lakers by a teenager. Shake Milton tied the most consecutive three-pointers made in NBA history. Kobe White became the first Bulls rookie since Michael Jordan to score 33-plus points in 3 straight games. Jeremy Grant had a career high in points during the Nuggets-Pistons game. Jeremy Grant now has 4,000 career points. The Knicks hired Leon Rose to be their next president. Joel Embiid has been fined $25,000 for making an obscene gesture on the playing court and using profane language during a live television interview. The Bucks broke the 2016-2017 Warriors record for the fastest team to clinch a playoff berth. In 56 regular season games, on February 23rd, the Bucks clinched the earliest playoff berth in NBA history. The Bucks are the first team this season to clinch a playoff berth. So if we take a look at the Bucks, there's no doubt that they're the best team in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA with the type of season that they've had, which has been led by Giannis Antetokounmpo. Also, Giannis Antetokounmpo has been one of the best players in the NBA this season. Now we're going to have to wait and see, but there's a possibility that Giannis Antetokounmpo will win MVP with the type of season he's been having this season with the Bucks. But also, with the type of season that the Bucks have been having by being the best team in the Eastern Conference and being the best team in the NBA, especially with the record that they have this season and the way they've been playing, the Bucks have a lot of potential this season going into the playoffs. And we're going to have to wait and see how far the Bucks advance into the playoffs. But the Bucks are going to be led by Giannis Antetokounmpo going into the playoffs. Depending on how the Bucks play in the playoffs, that's going to determine if the Bucks reach or had the possibility of winning this year's NBA Finals. We're going to have to wait and see how the Bucks play for the rest of the season, but especially in the playoffs. But depending on how they play, especially in the playoffs, the Bucks have a lot of potential, and they could possibly reach and win the NBA Finals. Since the Bucks have been the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they have been the best team in the NBA this season. So right now I'm going to update you at the current schedule for the Nuggets. I'm going to tell you every team the Nuggets went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. To start off, last week the Nuggets went against the Pistons, and the Nuggets beat the Pistons 115-98. The Nuggets went against the Clippers, and the Nuggets got blown out by the Clippers 132-103. The Nuggets went against the Raptors, and the Nuggets beat the defending NBA champions, the Raptors, 133-118. This week, the Nuggets go against the Warriors, the Hornets, the Cavaliers, and the Bucks. So that's the current schedule for the Nuggets. That's the teams the Nuggets went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. So right now I'm going to update you with the current NBA standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. I'm going to tell you the top 8 teams in both the Eastern and the Western Conference and the teams that are currently eligible for a playoff spot in the Eastern and Western Conference. To start off in the Eastern Conference, right now the Bucks are the number 1 seed and they have won 52 games. Right now the Raptors are the 2nd seed, they have won 42 games. Right now the Celtics are the 3rd seed, they have won 41 games. Right now the Heat are the 4th seed, they have won 39 games. Right now the Pacers are the 5th seed, they have won 37 games. Right now the 76ers are the 6th seed, they have won 37 games. Right now the Magic are the 7th seed, they have won 27 games. And right now the Nets are the 8th seed, they have won 26 games. In the Western Conference, right now the Lakers are the number 1 seed, they have won 46 games. Right now the Nuggets are the number 2 seed, they have won 41 games. Right now the Clippers are the number 3 seed, they have won 41 games. Right now the Rockets are the 4th seed, they have won 39 games. Right now the Jazz are the 5th seed, they have won 38 games. Right now the Thunder are the 6th seed, they have won 37 games. Right now the Mavericks are the 7th seed, they have won 37 games. And right now the Grizzlies are the 8th seed, and they have won 30 games. So that's the current NBA standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. That's the current teams in the Eastern and Western Conference that are the top 8 teams in both conferences. And those are the teams that are currently eligible for a playoff spot in the Eastern and Western Conference. Moving on now to NHL hockey. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Avalanche. I'm going to tell you every team the Avalanche went up against this past week and the final scores of those games, and I'm also going to tell you who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. To start off, last week the Avalanche went against the Sabres, and the Avalanche won a close game against the Sabres, 3-2. The Avalanche went against the Hurricanes, and the Avalanche won another close game, 3-2. The Avalanche went against the Predators. The Avalanche won another close game, 3-2. The Avalanche went against the Red Wings. The Avalanche won another close game, 2-1. So this past week, the Avalanche went against the Sabres, the Hurricanes, the Predators, and the Red Wings, and they were all close games that the Avalanche just won by 1 goal. So it was great to see the Avalanche win all these games against their opponents in the last week. And they were all close games that the Avalanche won by 1 goal. And it was great to see that the Avalanche were able to win these games here in Denver at the Pepsi Center, but especially the games that they won on the road. This week, the Avalanche go against the Ducks, the Canucks, the Sharks, and the Kings. So that's the current schedule for the Avalanche. That's the teams the Avalanche went up against this past week. And that's the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. So right now I'm going to update you with the current NHL standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. In the NHL, the division standings go off the amount of points each team scored, not by the wins or losses by the team. To start off in the Eastern Conference, in the Atlantic Division, right now the Bruins are leading this division at 94 points, and the next closest team is the Lightning at 87 points. In the Metropolitan Division, right now the Capitals are leading this division at 86 points, and the next closest team is the Flyers at 83 points. In the Western Conference, in the Central Division, right now the Blues are leading this division at 88 points. But right behind them, which is the next closest team, is the Avalanche. And the Avalanche are only sitting 1 point back from the Blues. The Avalanche are currently sitting at 87 points. And in the Pacific Division, right now the Golden Knights are leading this division at 80 points. And the next closest team is the Oilers at 78 points. So that's the current NHL standings in the Eastern and Western Conference. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the end of the show. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to end the show, what to watch for this week in sports. The Nuggets, NBA basketball, the Avalanche, NHL hockey, college basketball. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, NHL hockey, college football, and soccer. I hope you all have a great week. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports through Met Radio here on MyMetMedia.com. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.